As dads, some days we feel like we have all the answers, and some days we feel like we don't have a clue. If that describes you, you're at the right place. This is the All Pro Dad Podcast. Hey, I'm Ted Lowe, and I'm the host of the All Pro Dad Podcast, where each week we take a look at just one question that dads are thinking through, they're working out, and we take a look at what the experts say, things we've gotten wrong mostly, occasionally the things we've gotten right, and we leave you with just one simple but powerful pro move. And today I am joined by my buddies, Mr. Bobby Lewis and Mr. BJ Foster. How are you guys?
Hey, Ted. Good. Really good.
Hey, you know what I don't do a lot, which I want to do on this podcast, is I want to give a little bit of your background, because you guys you're kind of fancy guys a little bit. BJ.
Kind of. Yeah,
not extremely.
Yeah.
But you know, slightly above average guys for absolutely sure. BJ is the director of content here at Family First. You've been here, what?
10 years.
84? Yeah, for 10 years.
Right, 84.
He utilizes his experience in the corporate world, politics, nonprofits, and over 15 years of working with adolescents. Mm-hmm. BJ and his wife, Elizabeth, live in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, with 2 kids. Yeah. Oklahoma is where you keep Oklahoma, right?
Boomer Sooner.
Boomer Center. Mm-hmm. Is it Boomer Center?
It's Boomer Sooner, not Center.
Oh, it's Boomer Center.
You
just
made a whole bunch of Texas listeners mad, by the way. That's, to an Oklahoman, we don't care about that.
We don't care. Yeah.
That's
kind of the goal.
That's the goal.
Mr. Bobby Lewis. Bobby, welcome.
Man. Hey.
Bobby is the marketing media specialist here at Family First and also a copywriter. He's a public speaker, multimedia storyteller.
Yeah. That sounds fancier than it is, but thank you. Yeah.
I like that. He's an author, and Bobby and his wife, Jocelyn, live here in Seminole, Florida with their 3 kids.
Yeah. We've got kids all spread out. It's kind of a cool adventure. You know, we're doing, some days it's let's spell cat, and other days it's let's solve this crisis. So it just depends.
Yeah, kind of represent a lot of ages and a lot of dads here today. You know, I'm oldest and very tired. So that's how that works out. They'll wear you out, but in a great way. Today, our big question of the week, are parental expectations crushing teens? Are parental expectations crushing teens?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. That's how that works.
I mean, look, I don't know if they're crushing them, but it's certainly, I think, not the best way to kind of go about things, is to kind of lay expectations on teens. But I do think one of the things that I think parents need to know is with teenagers, there's internal chemistry going on that I think if we were aware of, we'd probably deal with them a little bit better. We kind of look at them. They look like they're grown up. They look like they're adults, but they're not. They're not adults. So here's a couple interesting kind of fun facts about teenagers that I think will help parents kind of deal with them, I think, a little bit more effectively. Number 1, teens have trouble remembering future tasks. Their prefrontal cortex has not fully developed, which is associated with higher executive function, and it's just not developed. So you tend to tell them stuff and they forget it, and you're like, they're being irresponsible, and that's where they are at the development stage. Second, we look at teens and we're like, they're staying up all night and they're sleeping all day, and we kind of think they're lazy or whatever. It's actually, this is from the American Chemical Society, that they produce melatonin about 3 hours later than adults and kids, and it continues to produce in the morning. So like the fact that they're going to sleep later and the fact that they sleep in is actually something that's chemically happening inside them.
And that would be something, again, like you said, to know, right? Like, because you're exactly right. We do think our kids are lazy. If kids knew this, though, we don't want teenagers to have this information.
You know,
right. Yeah.
What's wild is I've noticed this in real life. My 13-year-old just turned 13, and we noticed almost like flipping a switch. Like, she stays up later than we do now. I'm like, all right, good night. It's time for daddy to go to sleep. And she stays up and she reads and she hangs out. And then in the morning, I'm milling around the house. I'm like, why is she still sleeping? And it's just, that's her age. You know, she doesn't get up till like 9, 10 o'clock some days, maybe even later than that. And I'm like, you're wasting part of the day. Get up. And
I feel bad because my mom said the same thing to me, and now I'm an old guy who's saying the same thing to my kids. So it's funny,
Well, my kids' melatonin, I think, kicks in around 5 a.m. Like they're up until so here's another thing. Teens argue with parents a lot. It infuriates us. But here's the good thing about that. Teens who argue with their parents, they're probably more likely to say no when pressured to participate in risky behavior, according to a study that was in 2011. Nice. So if they're arguing with you, that's probably not a bad thing. That's actually probably a good thing. And it's just from a developmental stage, they're going to start pushing against the boundaries and the things you set up because they want to see if they're real.
So they know how to push back when someone's saying, I don't want to do this, or I'm thinking, are they thinking through? Are they learning? Is that part of this? Are they learning, trying to process, like, what do I believe? What do I not believe? What do I want to do? What do I not want to do?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, part of it is, okay, so parents set up boundaries and a system for kids, and they want to see, is it the best thing? Is it the right thing? And so if they're arguing with your parents and testing that means kind of there's a power within them that's saying, I don't know if I want to do that. I want to question that. I don't necessarily want to go along with that. And if they're doing it to you, then they're more than likely going to be doing it to their peers.
So you're telling me be grateful that my kid is confrontational with me. That's what you're saying right now?
Exactly.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I feel totally different now.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Okay. So in the midst of all of this stuff, in the midst of where teens are, I mean, the job of any parent is to kind of mold, shape, discipline, raise them up, train, teach. And we often hear, and I hear it a lot, is that we do that through expectations. Set the expectations. And I even hear this a lot, that set the expectations high so that you give them something to achieve. But ultimately, is setting these expectations, does it lead to pressure, and pressure that ultimately can be crushing to teens, can hurt teens, and can it cause a disconnect between the parents and the kids?
So if it's not expectations, if we're not to set expectations, what are we to do?
Well, I think it's a little bit different in that you need to set boundaries for teens. Like teens need boundaries. So when they step out of line, you give them consequences. That very much, but that's different than expectations. Expectations, it's in the word. We expect them to act a certain way that they haven't developed in order to do. One of the things that teens need to do, that this is a whole part of their process, is that they need to individuate. They need to find out who they are as an individual, and that involves separating from the parent. And so that has to happen. That power has to happen inside of them. And that's so the technique, the approach here should be much more about the parent raising up, coming alongside them, raising up kind of the power within them to make choices, moral character, all of that stuff. Unfortunately, when we put expectations on, it's outside influence. And therefore, what the kid tries to do is they try to satisfy the external pressure, and just to kind of get them off their back. It's like, okay, the parent or the teacher or whatever puts the expectation on, and it's like, okay, what kind of behavior do I need to do just to satisfy that, rather than developing what's internally kind of going on.
So you and I have talked about this quite a bit, because I write a lot of the articles for All Pro Dad. You're in charge of a lot of the article content for iMom All Pro Dad, BJ, and we've talked about this word expectations before, and I think we differ on it, but I don't know that we differ on it in like philosophical terms. I think we differ on it maybe in just an explanation, because I do think there are benefits to expectations for kids. In your mind, are there no benefits, or is it just a weighing the pros and cons situation? Or how do you view the expectations from a beneficial standpoint? Are there any at all for kids?
No, I don't think there's any benefit to it. I really don't think it's the best approach to go about it. I think it's much more come alongside them, train, teach, give empathy, listen, all of those things. But the expectation part of it is they're just not at a development stage to do it. Yeah. Like you tell them something like, I expect you to get A's and
Well, that was the example that I was going to ask about. Let's say, because this happened to me when I was growing up. My mom's like, I expect you to get good grades. Like, that's your job right now. You don't have a job any other time of your life. You're not working at the store or whatever. Like, your job right now is to be a student. And so do your job and get good grades. That was the expectation when I was growing up, which I get. I understand. She equated in her mind, and my dad too, like, hey, good grades equal good opportunities, equals good future. This is the first step. Do your best job. My expectation is you get good grades. I think there's a difference between saying, I expect you to get A's and I expect you to try your best, which could result in A's. So in my mind, like as a parent now, my kids are, all different age groups throughout school. I expect them to do their best, but I don't expect them to get A's. Like, it'd be great if you got A's. I had one sibling, I had multiple siblings. Some were very good at school and they didn't have to try hard. So when they didn't try hard, it was apparent. Others tried really hard, and whether they tried their best or not, C was the best they were going to get. So it wasn't necessarily a expectation that I think you have to get A's in my house, but I do think the expectation was, we want you to try your best. That seems like a fair expectation for kids, right? Something like that.
It's not the worst expectation. I still don't think it's not the best way to go about it. Even to say to try your best is a little bit confusing. It's a little bit murky. It's tough to even measure that. Like, hey, did you try your best on that test? Well, I got a C. I mean, I guess I could have stayed up until 4 a.m. studying. Maybe that would have been better. It's still I've got to satisfy the parent, and I need to satisfy the parent's expectations rather than, okay, what am I doing? What am I learning? It's a better approach for the parent to say, okay, you got to see do you think that's, do you think that's is pretty much asking the question, do you think that's as bad? Is that what you wanted?
Yeah.
Did you want more than that? Yeah, I want to get a B. Okay, well, what do you think we need to do to get a B? And that's coming alongside them rather than saying, I expect you to do your best. Teens there's a finite amount of time and effort that they can put towards stuff. And they have a lot of stuff that's hitting them at once. They have 5 different subjects they're hitting. They've got sports and activities that they have to participate in. A lot of them have to do service projects, and they are up at night late, and they're up in the morning, and all these things, and they're exhausted. So a better approach, I think, is, how do you think you did there? How you do? Because I mean, the reality is they might even be able to only give 80% to English and only 75%.
We're coming at it from a dad's perspective too. Like, as a parent, we have expectations, but they're getting expectations from coaches, from teachers, from friends. Like, there's expectations from everywhere. So I suppose that can be a lot of weight on a kid's shoulders.
100%.
And if you're contributing to that weight, is that the best thing for your kid?
So we as dads, we think about setting expectations. I'm a little bit like Bobby. I'm going, wow, I didn't know setting expectations was necessarily a negative thing. What I'm hearing from you is like, oh, this does make a lot of sense, especially when there's empathy for our kids. And we start thinking about the emotional and even chemical roller coaster that their brains and bodies are going on. Like, wow, that we should remember that, right? And with all the things coming their way. So as dads, what do we think is the purpose of setting expectations? Maybe that will help me process through where you're going.
The purpose of trying to set expectations is you want your kids to achieve. You want them to do well. And you want to set a standard of, like, if you want to be they want their kids to be successful in life. They want them to have self-disciplines. They want them to be able to study, be able to achieve, all that stuff. All that stuff is not bad. It's not bad. It's good. I just think expectations is the wrong way to go about it. You can set standards and be like, hey, this is what we're going after.
Right.
Instead of, I'm here, get to me. This is it, get there.
Okay. What about this? What if you have the expectation of a curfew? Like, I want my teenager to be home by 10 o'clock. How does that look different from an expectation and a boundary?
Yeah. See, I would say that's a boundary. The boundary is you are to be home at 12 o'clock.
Okay.
If you come in after that, you're going to get a consequence. That's boundaries and consequences. And I'm almost, it's like your kid, your teenager, they're going to come in late. Like you shouldn't expect that they're going to hit it. After everything we just mentioned, their prefrontal cortex, all of that stuff. So it gets you in a mindset of, okay, we've got boundaries. Okay. And you cross those boundaries and you're going to get a consequence. That to me is training. That's not setting expectations. That's not putting pressure on them.
So you mentioned the curfew. It reminded me of a funny story when I was a teenager. I had a girlfriend in high school and I knew she lived exactly 16 minutes from my parents' house. Exactly. I timed the lights. I knew it. I was able to drive at that point. We'd go to her house or whatever. I forget what my curfew was, but I looked at the clock and I was like, oh crap, 17 minutes. I better get in the car and start going. And then I realized I was hitting a light or two and I started speeding up, got a speeding ticket on the way home because I was trying so hard to get back before this time so I didn't get in trouble. And it ended up getting worse because then I got the car taken away. I had to, pay the fine and all that sort of stuff. I'm like, dang. Yeah. It was the girlfriend's fault, really. It wasn't my fault.
Someone helped us with that. Say, tell your kids, I would have used expectation. Sorry. Kids, here's my boundary. I want you to leave where you are by 9 o'clock. So they're not racing.
Right.
To get home. And if it takes you 20 minutes from leaving, that's great. But I'm still with the language of that. What you're saying, I think, BJ, and what I'm hearing is it's external validation in direction versus internal, right? For a teenager, we want them to have internal validation, internal decisions, not because this person, because they have so many expectations from friends and different people.
Yeah. Well, and you're building up internally the character within them, like the individual. Expectations basically works on behavior. And what they're going to do is they're going to put a shiny face. Whatever your expectation is, they're going to be like, okay, whatever I need to do to hit that expectation, I'm going to do it. But here it is. Here's what you wanted, and then I'm now going to leave. It becomes a relational disconnect too between you and the kid.
Wow. And so if you've got a people-pleasing kid, if a kid, it's people, I'm going to make mom and dad happy. I'm going to make teachers happy. Yeah. I'm going to make.
So whatever's happening internally with them.
To the detriment of their own happiness sometimes.
But here's the thing. The internal, the real part of them, they're going to hide from you. Mm-hmm. Because you are not a safe place. You are a place of pressure and expectations that I need to hit rather than this person is alongside me. And if I cross boundaries and I get consequences, you're teaching them, look, when you cross boundaries, when you get out into life, it's going to cause pain. It's going to cause relational pain. You're going to deal with you got a ticket. Yeah. That was a financial pain. Mm-hmm. You're teaching them, hey, listen, you leave that party early or you leave that party late or you leave wherever you are late to come home and you race home and you hit a dog or a kid or because you're racing. That's going to be super painful. So leave early. And if you get here late, I'm going to have to apply some consequences. So you learn that pain in a safe way now rather than learning it in a really detrimental way later.
Is that why a lot of kids go to college and immediately lose their mind? Like, I've been keeping mom and dad happy. Now I don't have to keep anybody happy but my friends, and they have no boundaries and they have no expectations, and I can do what I want to.
Yeah, but I think they're doing it before then. That's the thing. They're not. Right. So here's that, so from an identity standpoint, this is what a teen kind of looks like. And if you're just listening, I'm holding my kind of fingers out and they're all separated. And a teenager is there's somebody in English class, and then there's somebody at their sports team, and then there's somebody in youth group, and then there's somebody when they're home with the family. They're all real. It's all real, but they can all look very different. Like this guy, when he's hanging out with his friends, he's a very different person than when he's in English class. And he's a very different person when he's at his youth group. Like they're all different. And eventually what happens is they all kind of come together. So this is where it's sort of weird, where you see this kid in youth group or at home with his family. He's like, this kid is a perfect kid. Guys, he's so nice and respectful. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, he just, like he just got caught doing cocaine on the weekend. And you're like, where did that come from? It's because his core identity hasn't come together yet. And he's kind of he's his real self in all these different places. It's just different aspects. And eventually it all kind of comes together. So when a teenager goes to college, they don't have anyone else around. So it's like, I'm this guy. But there's a part of college where it's coming together. And then there are contradictions, and eventually they get worked out as they come together. But that's the thing. It's like if you put expectations on, he's going to say, okay, I'm going to pick out one finger and I'm going to be this guy and I'm going to polish this up for you, Dad, so that you see this and there your expectations. I'm going to at least make it look like I am working really hard. And so, but then we don't see what's happening on the inside.
So, BJ, you're talking about kids trying to please everybody, polish themselves up just so everyone gets the best version of them. It kind of leads me to this really, I think, important point. It says kids need their parents to be a safe place, and they need us to be the people who can help them navigate the complexity of the world around them, because everything's changing. I mean, if you're getting expectations from sports and from school and from dance and from whatever else, everything's just changing and swirling around them all the time. They need us to create an environment of safety as teenagers. They need us to come alongside them and support them with guidance rather than just pressure to perform. And then we've got to have those boundaries and the consequences. I think the consequences are just as important as the boundaries, because if you set the boundary and you don't enforce it, it might as well not be there. We've got to do that and kind of stray away from this expectations idea. You're changing my mind on this. I'll be honest with you, because I've always thought expectations were a very good thing. But having you explain it, I think, is helpful, because I'm sure there's plenty of dads out there who are like, no, I expect A's, I expect B's, I expect you to get your best effort and everything. Yeah, I think it's a reframing of maybe how we think about it. I hope that's how you see it too, Ted.
Absolutely. It feels for me, BJ, it's like putting a common thread. What we talk about here all the time is, for our kids, it's not about what they do or how they do it. It's like who they're becoming. And this feels very much like a paradigm shift to say, hey, Dad guides me and loves me. He's aware of my life. He doesn't expect me to be like him or expect me to be perfect. I love this, BJ. It's really changed my mind too, Bobby.
Yeah. BJ's a very influential guy,
He really
so much
is.
Wisdom on that side of the table. I like that.
You'd think he'd been studying this for a really long time.
Well, no, and I do appreciate it, because for people who didn't know BJ's background, I don't know if we mentioned it in the beginning. You've worked with teenagers for years, and you've seen hundreds of teenagers come through all these youth programs and things like that. Every one of them are different, but there's common threads, and I think pressure is probably that very common thread that hits every single teenager, and they feel it from so many different areas. You just get squeezed, and so if we can remove a little bit of that pressure, we can't necessarily remove it from their friends or from their coaches. The coaches are going to do what they do, and the friends are going to do what they do. But if we can maybe remove a little bit of pressure from the parenting side of things, maybe they feel a little less squeezed. And I think that's good for them.
That's brilliant, Bobby. I love that.
By the way, I just want to mention that this is coming directly from Chap Clark at the Fuller Institute. I would highly recommend you reading his stuff. Parental, they're fantastic. So they're what has educated me on this. That, and to apply their work to 15 years of working with teens. Yeah. I saw the truth in it.
Well, the bottom line is your teens need your support. They need your guidance. They don't need your expectations.
I love that. I love that. A lot of empathy, a lot of compassion, a lot of strength for our kids.
But they do need to not speed on the way home.
Correct.
Take it from me. It was an expensive ticket, and I regret it still. I haven't gotten one since, so it taught me something.
How fast were you going?
Oh gosh, it was 45, and I think I was going like well over 60. I was like, man, I do not want to get in trouble. So
that's not as bad as I've done.
And what's funny is I still sometimes drive past that area, and I look to see if there's a cop over there, because I remember right where he was sitting. It's funny.
I'm reading this, I'm thinking, I think I still have a teenage brain. Yeah. Like I'm looking at all this going, I'm missing basic life skills. I just got a speeding ticket.
Too?
Yeah. So I'm like, I'm a teenager raising teenagers. This is making me very sad.
Our expectations for you are pretty low.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
That's how this works. So I guess that leads into the pro move of the week, which is ironically given by me. So there we go. Hey, ask your teen, who is making you feel the most pressure right now? Who is making you feel the most pressure right now? And if they look back and say it's you, Dad. You just say, hey, thanks, buddy. Thanks for letting me know. But that's a great question, because our kids need to know, once again, that we love them not based on what they do, but who they are.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, BJ, thank you. Bobby, thanks for joining us. BJ learned a lot. It's good stuff. Very good stuff.
You met my expectations, BJ. Good job. You did.
That's good.
Well, I'm an adult. So.
Hey, and if this podcast is helpful for you, can you take just 1 minute and go rate and review on your favorite podcast platform? And if you have a question, I love this. If you have a question that you want us to tackle, please put that in the comments. For more insights and tips, you can check out our LinkedIn pages, which will be in the show notes. And speaking of show notes, we have lots of great links to Chap Clark and different articles. Lots of great resources here at allprodad.com. Can't wait to see you next week. We know that you and your kids will be glad you did. Thanks for listening to the All Pro Dad podcast. All Pro Dad is the fatherhood program of the nonprofit Family First. Along with our motherhood program, iMom, we exist to help you love your family well. Subscribe to our daily email, the All Pro Dad Play of the Day, by going to allprodad.com/subscribe and get daily powerful and practical fatherhood tips in your inbox. The All Pro Dad podcast is hosted by me, Ted Lowe, produced by Bobby Lewis.